Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey, I'm Bret from Let's Rewatch, and I am here to talk to you about one of my favorite games of all time, and that is 2012's The Unfinished Swan. It's a game that covers what I would call a lot of deep content. The impermanence of things, death, grief, and how we process, and the things that we hold on to and find important. I think the first thing I want to talk about is resonance in storytelling. And by that I mean not just a story that you can connect with or one that's been written well so that you feel the emotion of the big moments, but I'm talking about stories that stick with you and change the way you think about things and the way you live your life. You know, something that really resonates with you. I feel like The Unfinished Swan is that game for me. A lot of games, you know, they'll give you the goal of like avoiding the apocalypse or becoming the best drug dealer. But The Unfinished Swan doesn't really do that. It kind of just drops you into a world and says, here you are, you exist. Now it's up to you to figure out what you're going to do with your time and with the environment. And really at the end of the game, you're not really exploring the world as your goal. Now in this game, I think the goal is really more about finding yourself by exploring the world. I guess I'll start with the storytelling in this game. I think they really just knocked it out of the park. Being that my regular podcast is a movie watching and review show, I feel like one thing that we come up on a lot is this idea that everything has to make sense. Like plausibility is the most important part about your story. You know, you see it all the time online, people ranting about how, oh, this couldn't have happened in the story. You know, that doesn't make sense. I've definitely done that. I've definitely done that on my show. But I feel like that thinking gets in the way of building and writing a really resonant story. You know, like a parable, something that has meaning outside of its own context. And the thing I like about The Unfinished Swan is it really doesn't concern itself with any of that. The narrative that you play through in this game is actually presented through a narrated children's book that you catch glimpses of the pages at the beginning of each stage and chapter. And the gameplay, I think the intro sets up fairly obviously that it's in the context of a dream. And that allows for a lot of interesting storytelling throughout the game, where I feel like in other environments, it would probably feel a little stiff or on the nose with the writing just coming out and telling you the moral of a thing they're talking about. You know, there's a few other games I can think of where you can really feel the writing of it and it kind of pulls you out of the game, but not here because the game is literally being told out of a children's book. And I feel like it's been integrated really well into the game and into what you can expect from the world. Those moments of narrative dishonesty don't happen when the story is being read to you. So that covers the story. The next great thing about the game is the gameplay. It's really unlike any other game that I've played in that from the beginning, it hands you almost nothing. You decide how you proceed throughout the game. You design your own interactions with the environment, and not in a Minecraft sort of way. Like there are things you have to do, but you really get to figure out how to do them. And none of the interactions ever really end up the same way twice. There's definitely some other creatures in the game. I think there's some fish or a frog running around early on, but largely you don't interact with anything in the game. You're mostly just chasing the swan from the painting throughout this beautiful world that they've built. And I won't go on too much about just how good this game looks. Suffice to say that if you were to look up a photo of the labyrinth level, just the design is just stunning. And without spoiling how you interact with things, it's just, it feels like the game was specifically designed Not so that the gameplay had great visuals to go along with it, but that the visuals truly affect the way you play the game. So outside of the narrative, there's really only one side quest for the whole game, and that is to find the balloons that are scattered around the environment, hidden away. And much like the rest of the game, that's about exploring your own fears and doubts through the environment. Even the side quest doesn't require a special skill or knowledge of anything later in the game. It really only asks you to be present and look around you. So I'll leave you with this. This game, you start out in a white room, white walls, white ceiling, white floor. You can't see where you're going or where you've been. You can hear your footsteps, but you're just in a void until you discover the one skill that the game gives you, and that is to make a mess. And once you've done that, once you've started making a mess, you're able to make out the environment and work your way through the levels and get to where you need to go, chasing down the swan. And you're not told whether what you're doing is right or wrong. There's certainly ways to make too much of a mess and lose your way again. The game is really about balance and movement. And as long as you keep making a mess and keep moving forward, you find out when you get to the end. When you look back, then you find out that the mess you made is really what let you get this far. So yeah, that's the Unfinished Swan. I really can't recommend it enough. Not just because it's a great game, but because it inspires great philosophy. And it's one of very few games that I've ever played that has felt important.
Again, I'm Bret from Let's Rewatch. Happy gaming.
It all started with a mouse, and in the last 100 years, the magic of Disney has filled our homes and hearts and defined generations. Join the Doe Up in Dreams podcast as they take a deep dive into the Disney vault and examine the history, artistry, controversy, and even drama behind your favorite Disney films with host Maddie Limerick. With guests ranging from Imagineers, Broadway stars, voice actors, and even your favorite certain POV hosts. You'll want to tune in each episode to see what magic they'll dig up next. Find out more at certainpov.com and wherever you find podcasts.
CPOV.
certainpov.com.